Well, good morning and welcome to City Hall. We'll get started with our invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Phyllis Poe is the chaplain for the Oklahoma City Police Department. She'll lead us in the invocation, and then afterwards I'll ask Councilman Sam Bowman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand?
Would you pray with me, please? Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the beauty of it and for life itself. We thank you for your grace. We thank you, Father, for your direction in our professional and personal lives. Lord, I pray that you would help us to remember the warriors of this day who gave their lives for us. I pray for the warriors who serve us around the world at this time, and I pray for the warriors of our street. Father, I pray now for those who will be honored today. I pray that you will bless them and that they would feel thanked and encouraged for the years of service that they gave, for their commitment and dedication to our city and to our state, to our nation. Lord, I ask now as we meet here that you would direct and give us the common sense wisdom that we need for all the matters that will be dealt with here today. Thank you for the power of prayer. Thank you for these who serve, and I give you the praise in your most holy and precious name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame has recently announced its newest inductees, and as you would expect, Oklahoma City is well represented. We have several former members of our police department who are here today, and we will start with a resolution commending and congratulating Bob Wilder on his induction to the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame. Bob, come on up. We'll have a resolution, and I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and read it while we get settled.
Whereas Robert Bob Wilder was inducted into the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame on December 5, 2010, whereas in February 1960, Bob Wilder, the son of an Oklahoma City police officer, joined the Oklahoma City Police Department and served the citizens of Oklahoma City for 30 consecutive years. During his tenure with the Oklahoma City Police Department, he moved up through the ranks and was appointed Chief of Police in February 1985, serving as Chief of Police until June of 1990. Whereas Bob Wilder, following his retirement, served as Commissioner of the Oklahoma Alcohol Beverage Law Enforcement Commission from 1994 to 1997. Bob Wilder was appointed Sheriff of Marshall County and has since been reelected 4 times by Marshall County citizens. Whereas Bob Wilder has served on numerous boards and commissions throughout his career, including President of the 93rd Annual Convention of the Oklahoma Sheriff and Peace Officers Association. Bob Wilder and his family have demonstrated a commitment to public service. His father, mother, brother, and children have a combined total of 167 years of public service. Whereas Bob Wilder exemplifies the ideals and values of Oklahoma City through his distinguished service to citizens of Oklahoma and his exemplary level of integrity, commitment, and dedication to his chosen profession. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do commend Robert Bob Wilder for his commitment to public safety and congratulate him on his induction into the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame.
You've been reelected 4 times down in Marshall County after leaving the Oklahoma City Police Department, but this is really the only election that really matters today. We got to get a motion and a second, and then see if the council is going to approve this resolution for you.
There's a couple on here that I'm concerned about.
It may not be unanimous. You never know. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. How about that? Green lights for Bob. Congratulations. Thanks very much.
Well, appreciate this very much, and I'm very humbled by this whole situation with the Law Enforcement Hall of Fame and the city. It's been a long time since I stood before the council here and talked, 20 years, and it has changed with the exception of a couple here that, was still around in Oklahoma City when I was here. Pete and I just haven't got any younger, I noticed, so, but I do appreciate the citation here today, and thank you.
Let's show our appreciation to Bob. And Chaplain Jack Poe. Jack, come on up. Francis, go ahead and get started on the resolution, and Jack and I'll get settled.
Whereas Jack Poe was inducted into the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame on December 5th, 2010. Jack Poe has served as chaplain for the Oklahoma City Police Department for more than 23 years. Chaplain Poe received his BA in Sociology from the University of Central Oklahoma, his BD from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, and his Doctor of Ministry from Phillips University in Enid. Whereas Chaplain Poe responds to all officer-involved shootings and works with Oklahoma City officers and their families who have undergone extreme emotional trauma. Whereas Chaplain Poe worked with the officers and families who were impacted by the bombing of the Murrah Federal Building and is sought as a speaker on the city's response. Whereas in 1998, Chaplain Poe received the prestigious National Crime Victim Service Award, the highest federal honor given for victim advocacy in Washington, D.C., by U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder on behalf of President Bill Clinton. Whereas in 2001, Chaplain Poe traveled to New York City by request to work with the New York City Police Department's peer support program during the rescue and recovery taking place at the World Trade Center. Chaplain Poe was honored in 2007 with the Career Chaplain of the Year Award from the Baptist General Convention of Oklahoma, and in July of 2008, the International Conference of Police Chaplains presented him with the John A. Pierce Award for Excellence in Police Chaplaincy. Whereas Chaplain Poe and Phyllis, his wife of 49 years, were awarded medals for meritorious service by the Oklahoma City Police Department in 2009. Whereas Jack and Phyllis Poe have 2 children, 3 grandchildren, and 2 great-granddaughters. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby commend and congratulate Chaplain Jack Poe for his induction into the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Now you can applaud. How about that? Congratulations.
Let me thank the council for all your support during the career with the Oklahoma City Police Department, the support of all our chiefs who have been very faithful to support us through the program, and especially for Phyllis, my sidekick, who I think without her support this would not happen. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Congratulations. Let's show one more round of applause for that. Now, we have a resolution that is honoring a total, I believe it's 6 women who are going in together in the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame, and 2 of them are with us here today, Iona Faye Chapman and Jean Latham. So if they'll come up, we will read the resolution.
Whereas Jean Latham, Ina Mae Tiny Miller, Iona Faye Chapman, Edna Jean Lynn, Lois Faye Moore, and Mildred Louise Jones were inducted into the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame on December 5th, 2010. Whereas in August of 1955, these 6 women were commissioned as the first female police officers in Oklahoma City and in the state of Oklahoma. Whereas the idea of female officers was not accepted for the first few years of their service, but the individual standards and professionalism of these women proved that female officers could serve admirably and contribute to the profession of law enforcement. Whereas officers Latham, Miller, Chapman, Lynn, Moore, and Jones received 3 weeks of training before taking to the streets of downtown Oklahoma City. Because of these pioneers, women serve at all levels of police service today. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby honor Jean Latham, Ina Mae Tiny Miller, Iona Faye Chapman, Edna Jean Lynn, Lois Faye Moore, and Mildred Louise Jones for their fortitude in opening doors for future generations of women and for their induction into the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame.
I bet we can get a passage on this one. What do you think? All right. Look up at the board. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. How about a round of applause for these young ladies? Thank you so much. Would you all like to say something? Okay. Okay. Thank you all very much for your service. You're welcome. You're very welcome. And congratulations to you and the families of the other recipients. Well, each month, the South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club helps us honor one employee of the month. And, of course, we have over 4,000 employees, so it's quite an honor to be selected. And I have to be the first to admit that I didn't know Mary Ellen Layton until this morning when she came by my office for a picture. But Mary Ellen is apparently very popular because she's involved in the payroll. Mary Ellen, come on forward. Congratulations on being our Employee of the Month. We have a resolution. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Whereas Mary Ellen Layton has been a city employee for 4 years and is a Data Systems Technician 3 in the payroll section of the Accounting Division of the Finance Department. Whereas Mary Ellen assists payroll officers in accurately completing payroll every pay period and prepares all necessary reports to get payroll completed in a timely manner so all city employees receive their paychecks. Whereas Mary Ellen is the most sought-after person in the city for help with payroll and the Kronos Workforce Timekeeper system. Mary Ellen has been known to manually calculate a person's overtime or holiday pay when needed and is an expert at figuring out and correcting time card errors. Mary Ellen is very dependable and seldom takes time off. She's always there to encourage employees when they call with questions. In fact, the phrase heard most often from her is, "Don't worry about it." Whereas Mary Ellen is a great help in keeping everyone on the right track to ensure an accurate payroll week after week, and no matter what the circumstances, she always takes the time to help make sure things are correct. Whereas this council desires to recognize Mary Ellen Layton for her dedication, professionalism, and commitment to the citizens of Oklahoma City. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend Mary Ellen Layton, December 2010 South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club Employee of the Month.
All right, Mary Ellen, let's see if we can get a motion in a second for this one. Cast your votes. All right, let's show our appreciation, Mary Ellen. On behalf of all the other employees, thank you for your service. We're on item 3E of the council agenda. Ask for a motion and a second on the appointments to the MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board. Cast your votes. Those appointments are passed unanimously. Move on to item 4. It's the Journal of Council Proceedings. Item 4A is to receive the Journal of Council Proceedings for November 30th, and item 4B is to approve the Journal of Council Proceedings for November 23rd. Comments or questions on the Journal? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And item 5 is request for uncontested continuances.
Mayor, I have several this morning. Starting on page 4, item 6H, we'd like that item to be stricken to allow for a companion item to go before the Planning Commission first. So that's on, again, 6H on page 4. And then moving to page 10, under item 8E1K, 14727 Southeast 75th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner's removed. On to item 8F1D, 4305 South Miller. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item F, 5621 South Shields. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has removed structures. Item I, 3405 South St. Clair. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item J, 3312 South Woodward. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Going on to page 11, item S, 1407 Northwest 27th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item T, 625 Northeast 28th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item Y, 1205 Northwest 31st Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item double C, 1516 Northwest 34th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Double F, 6205 Southeast 47th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item double I, 3123 Southwest 64th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. And item double L, 2732 Northwest 65th Street. We ask that that be stricken. Again, the owner has secured.
Any other requests for uncontested continuances? All right, we'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. There are 2 items. Comments or questions on the MFA? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. There are 6 items. We have a motion and a second on the PPA. Any comments or questions? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Mayor, I do want to point out an item on the PPA, an item you just voted on, the Brawlers contract.
Yes.
The memo and the terms and conditions sheet and the agreement itself are not in agreement. The contract is right. The term sheet is right. The memo, the actual term of the agreement, was misstated in that. But the agreement and the term sheet are correct.
Okay.
Will we get copies of the agreement sheet?
I'm sorry?
Will we get copies of the agreement?
Yeah, it's only the length, term being the length of time. The 1 year versus a 2-year issue, so we can provide you copies.
Okay. On the financial aspects of this particular transaction, is the city coming out whole on this?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
And is the roof completely repaired in the Norick Arena? Are we comfortable?
Oh, the Norick Arena?
The Norick Arena. Yeah, I changed subjects.
Yes, you can.
I'm sorry about that.
There has been some damage to the arena, so some cables that were deteriorated. Those have been fixed at this point in time, and now we put in a monitoring system, so we'll be able to check for future failures. There's a lot of cables up there, and some of them are deteriorating with age, and we want to make sure we catch those as they fail.
And a portion of this was also related to the concrete section that fell down.
Yes.
And we are completely convinced at this point that the roof is secure. And
we've had structural engineers out evaluating the situation. They're very comfortable with the remedies they've recommended.
Great. Thank you.
As far as the team itself, Mr. Couch, the league now, is this a league that's under the prior team that we had?
Yes, it's Arena Football League was where we were before, was the largest or the highest level of Arena Football League. This is a level below that.
All right, we'll adjourn the OCPPA, reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Tom Anderson, City Manager's Office. We do have the owner of the Bricktown Brawlers here, Mr. Dale Morris. He'd just like to address it.
Sure. Come on up, Dale.
First of all, good morning. Thank you for, giving us this opportunity. As far as your question, our league's actually not a step below whatsoever. We have 22 teams across the nation. It is a professional league. We're growing every day. We have expansion teams calling us at the league office every hour on the hour. Whereas the Arena Football League, it does have some televised, but there's only 14, 15 teams, and those are up and down. So to answer your question, I would say it's on the same level.
We appreciate your interest in Oklahoma City and look forward to attending the Bricktown Brawlers games this spring.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for coming by and saying hello.
You bet.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the consent docket. Are there any comments or questions?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I don't know if this is proper or not, but I'd like to comment on one of the items that was stricken. Item H, is that permitted under the rules? Or item H? Yes. Excuse me. It was stricken.
Yes.
And I have a comment on that.
Okay.
This is an example of trying to collect under a performance bond when the contractor, the developer, went bankrupt. And it's been a terribly complex situation for the city. We've had to go to court over it. We've inconvenienced our citizens who've tried to buy property, build houses in this area. And I'm working on a process now to eliminate the bond as an option to secure the contractor's work. There are two other means that are used more frequently, and that is a letter of credit or actual cash deposit. And I think either of those would provide the city much more flexibility in its ability to respond to these kind of things, respond to them in a timely fashion, so as to not involve the city in lawsuits and not inconvenience our citizens who want to build houses in these areas. And we have some ongoing discussions with some of the developers now to try to see what difficulties that might place on their operation. And so if you've got any comments about that, I would be delighted to hear them in the next week or so.
You and I have had discussions about this. It is not necessarily a procedural thing to collect on a performance bond. There's a lot of steps involved on this, and we have had marginal success in collecting on them in the past.
Okay. Larry?
Why, Your Honor?
Larry, on item Y, yes.
And Mayor, I have two, if I could, T and W.
Okay.
Yeah, item Y is a landscape agreement for Tulsa Park. The president of the River Park Neighborhood Association, Gina Daniel, is here. Gina, if you'd stand up, please. River Park started about 5 years ago under Gina's leadership. She was selected as Citizen of the Year by Neighborhood Alliance at their awards banquet back in November. I'd like to just recognize her and thank you for taking over the beautification of Tulsa Park.
Meg, item T and W?
T and W. I just wanted to quickly mention that item T is an effort on behalf of Commissioner Brian Maughan. Pete and I have been working with the Commissioner fairly closely. He's created a project called SHINE, which is Start Helping Impacted Neighborhoods Everywhere, and working with teams of folks that have identified individual mile square quadrants in the city to work on things like graffiti removal and code enforcement. And Pete and I both attended, I think, the inaugural meeting of his group, and I was very impressed by the folks' commitment, and I really appreciate the Commissioner's efforts in that regard. And the second is just a point of interest. Item W is the contract for the removal of the former federal post office in the area designated for our Central Park.
It's our first expenditure of, outside of consulting fees, our first expenditure of dollars for Map Street.
Any other comments or questions on the consent docket? All right. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. On to the concurrence docket. All right. Looks like we have 5 items on the concurrence docket. A motion and a second. Any comments or questions on any of these items? All right. Looks like we're good to go. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. That moves us on to item 8. These are items that require a separate vote, and we'll start with a series of zoning cases. The first is in Ward 5. It's an ABC issue at 6901 South May Avenue. Brian?
I have had no contact on either side of this. Is there anybody here to speak to this issue? I move approval.
All right. Cast your votes on item 8A1, and it passes unanimously. We're on to item 8A2. It's also an ABC issue. This one's in Ward 2 at 12252 North May Avenue. Sam?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a new restaurant, Rococo, within the confines of the North Park Mall. David Box is here, but I don't think we have any protests. We didn't at Planning Commission. Are there any protests here today? I'm going to move for approval then.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions on item 8A2? All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8A3 is in Ward 6. The address is 1500 Northwest 1st Street. It's currently an R3 medium-density residential district, and it would become an I1 light industrial district. Meg?
Is Mike Terracina here today? Hi, Mike. Do you want to come forward? Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you guys doing today?
Marvin Terracina.
Great, nice to see you both. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about the project you're playing? It's down on First Street.
Basically, we're just building an office warehouse, because it's been an empty lot for such a long time, and we're just finding the perfect suitor for it. Basically, we grew up in the neighborhood. We just want to revitalize the area because we noticed that on Main Street there's a lot of businesses that are coming up and coming and all that stuff. So,
well, you've done an absolutely terrific job on 23rd Street.
Oh, yes.
Really appreciate all the great work there. And the only question I had, and I believe you've got an easement that you were going to submit today to protect that site triangle. So there were no protests, and I'm very excited to see your continued efforts to redevelop in the inner city. Very grateful for it, and I would move approval.
All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 8A3. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8A4 is a zoning case in Ward 8 at 8500 North May Avenue. It's currently a planned unit development, and it would become a simplified planned unit development. Pat?
Thank you, Your Honor. First thing I'd like to mention is the easement that has been requested here has been submitted now, and we have that easement in hand.
Okay.
This is a new bank project on May Avenue, and there were no protests. Dennis Box is here to answer any questions anybody might have. But failing no questions, I move for approval.
Second.
All right, any questions on item 8A4? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on item 8B, and I believe Susan Miller is going to have a presentation for us. We're amending the Oklahoma City.
Actually, Russell's with us this morning.
Okay.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
We do have a presentation. Are we going to get it up? There are two items here, as you can see. One is the amendment to the comprehensive plan, and there is a PUD that was associated with this. The plan needed to be amended to be able to accommodate the PUD. The PUD was proposed to allow some low-density, rural nature office commercial development in the area, which at the time of the application was designated environmental conservation area. Environmental conservation area is there largely to protect the drainage catchment for Lake Stanley Draper and proposed West Elm Creek Reservoir, but it does have other values as well. It's also about protecting the rural nature of this area. The Planning Commission, in consideration of the amendment to the comprehensive plan, approved that unanimously, but they denied the PUD 6-1. The reasons for approval of the comprehensive plan amendment, when the original comprehensive plan was done and the environmental conservation boundary was designated, at that point in time we really did not have adequate technology to be able to determine precisely what that catchment boundary was. So we were able to go into this and look at the topography in more detail at this time and be able to modify the plan boundary to be able to accommodate the majority of what was being requested in the PUD, but not all of what was requested in the PUD. And we'll see that in a minute in this next slide. Is it moving? Oh, I've got it. It's not moving. We have a map here that illustrates the area of interest, and you can... We've lost the whole thing now. It's the larger green area around Stanley Draper in the southeast portion of the city. This is the area in question. You can see, sort of zooming in here and getting into more detail, you can see this is a couple of miles largely west of Lake Stanley Draper. It's a small area in the corner of that section. There was a PUD that was approved for large lot single-family residential in the past. A strip was left vacant there adjoining Sooner Road. There's a small C3 commercial property that's already been zoned there in the hard southwest corner of this particular section. You can see the original environmental conservation line is that straight line. It has been amended so that it's taken out that portion there what the arrow was pointing to. The remaining environmental conservation area is still coloured green. It's about 30 acres. About two-thirds of that is now outside of the environmental conservation area. It's designated suitable for rural development, but a third of it remains within the PUD. There were no significant environmental issues with the area that was deleted from the environmental conservation area, no significant vegetation, habitat or wildlife, therefore it was not considered an issue to be able to remove that. Because that land drains away from the environmental conservation area, we in the Planning Department did not have an issue with the modification of that boundary. And that was the basis for the Planning Commission's approval. And that's it.
All right, any comments or questions for Russell on this issue?
I move approval.
Is anyone signed up to speak on the issue that accompanies this? Okay. Sounds like we're good to go, Russell. Thanks for all your work on this.
Thank you.
All right, we'll first then vote in, I guess, item 8B, Pete. This is in Ward 4.
B1, I guess.
Yes, we're going to first vote 8B1. You want to make a motion on that?
Yes, so move.
Okay. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And then item 8B2 is the zoning case in Ward 4.
Actually, I have my inclination is to move approval, but since the Planning Commission voted to deny it, I'd like for Dennis, if you'd come up and talk a little bit about it. I read the Planning Commission's findings and the discussion, and actually was hard-pressed after reading them and to understand why they voted to deny it. I mean, there's C3 already on the corner. Sooner Road is a highway, is a state-designated highway. It's the alternate football road. It seems to me it's a little bit late to try to, quote, preserve the rural area along that road. We've already got C3, and there's a lot of activity. The residential behind it is growing and stymied a little bit by the economy. But talk a little bit, if you will, Dennis, about what occurred and what the arguments were and why you don't agree with them.
Mayor, Councilman White, and other council persons, Dennis Fox on behalf of the applicant. And the applicant is Joe Glahn, who's sitting to my right. Tim Johnson and I represent Joe. And to answer your first question, the Planning Commission, it was one of those Thursdays, there's 3 people gone. The Planning Commission, which I think always does a very good job, sometimes we don't agree. On this one, started talking about May Avenue. And they started talking about commercial on May Avenue. What they didn't focus in on was the fact that here we have a perfect line of demarcation, which is the north lot line to stop rural commercial. We came in and developed a SPUD where we don't have unlimited commercial. We have very restricted commercial. And so we think that, as you indicated, next to a state highway, this is a perfect piece of property and a perfect location. My client's family owned the quarter section since 1943, and so he has been through good times and bad times, and when he was convinced to sell the residential, he always planned on saving the property that was adjacent to a highway to develop it for what we now have in front of you. With regard to the staff, I think it's important to understand the staff recommended that the south two-thirds be approved, there's 12 acres, and that the tract 2, which would be about 3 acres, be left in its natural state. And when you look at Sooner Road, you look at residential back to the east, we don't think preserving this for its natural state is the appropriate thing. So that gets to the question of, are we going to do anything that's going to be negatively impacting West Elm Creek? And Mr. Johnson's here, and he can discuss with you why that's not a negative and not a concern. So,
Morning, Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates. What Dennis is referring to is there are some restrictions in the conservation area that can be applied to help protect the West Elm Creek Reservoir expansion at some time in the future when it's built. As a part of the residential plat, when it was approved under the PUD, there was a portion of the northeast corner that was eliminated because it fell within the riparian protective corridor of West Elm Creek Reservoir. So that piece was lopped off, and the city actually acquired that to protect the lake. The other issue that was applied to the residential was detention of the surface runoff, which we did do. In this particular case, because only the 3 acres that in the north area drains to the north and ultimately into the West Elm Creek Basin, what we have proposed and written into the PUD is that we would provide detention and bioretention, which is a common use of protecting parking lots from polluting stormwater runoff basins in major cities like Houston, L.A., Dallas uses it, and that's an option that we chose to meet the criteria of the conservation area. And by the nature of the fact that there's not a public sanitary sewer out here, the spacing of the structures and the open space required would be much greater than if it were a May Avenue, for example. We're going to have probably 30% of the property would have to remain open to allow the septic system to operate. So we feel with all of those restrictions that are in the PUD that we have met the intent of the protection of the conservation area.
It is served by water.
Yes, sir.
Right.
There's a border main. Yes, sir.
Right. There aren't any protests, are there? I don't think there are protests. Were there any at the Planning Commission, except for Mr. Bright? I know my Planning Commissioner was in favor of it. I'm going to move approval.
All right. Let's cast your votes then on item 8B2. Passed unanimously. Item 8C is a zoning case in Ward 1. The address is 6200 Northwest Expressway. It's currently R1 single-family residential, and it would be changed to a simplified plan unit development. And, Gary, we have a handful of people who have signed up to speak.
That doesn't surprise me, Mayor. If we could, I'd like for the applicant to talk about their application here, and then we'll let the citizens address that after that.
Thank you, Councilman. Mayor, Councilman Mars, members of the council, Dennis Box on behalf of the applicant. Jim Griffith and Dennis Silvers are here. They are owners in OnQ. You all probably have seen a number of OnQs all around the state, also in Kansas. This is a site that they have under contract to purchase, and if you'll look at the unusual nature, it's a half an arrowhead is the design of what's shown as R1. This was property that ODOT had, and the owner of the property acquired it as surplus. Now, the remainder of the property that the owner presently has is C3, straight commercial. When zoning was filed, the engineers came, met with the staff looked at it and said they did not have a concern or a problem, but wanted us to show what uses would be put on the property. So what you see in the document is an OnQ, which will take the entire site, not just what's shown as R1, although that's all we're asking for. The rest of the property does not need zoning and is zoned commercial.
Excuse me, does that C3 include the office block to the west?
No, it'd be the C3 goes all the way where it shows retail C3, but that line, which is just to the east of that building, would be where the property line stopped, Councilman Bowman.
All right.
Okay, but it's all that vacant property is C3, less than except this little surplus. So that's why when you look at your staff report, you see that the staff recommended approval. What else are you going to do on Northwest Highway? It's zoned R1. We know R1 is for single family. Are you going to build a home on Northwest Highway? No. So what would be developed? Well, we did a SPUD. We eliminated a number of uses, and we provided an opportunity for everybody to look at what we were doing. Now, what that started was, unfortunately, a number of people that were concerned. We had probably a half a dozen meetings with the neighbors within both the south and the north area. We've had meetings up until 2 weeks ago, and the first meeting was very, I think the people were very angry. They were angry not so much at our project, which was a little surprising. They were mad about a project that was going on Wilshire Boulevard. So it was kind of that perfect storm of individuals being mad about construction that was going on in their area, and also the potential of what some thought might be a negative for their neighborhood. So what we found was the neighbors wanted us to work with them, which we have. They wanted us to do things like go out to ODOT and talk to Mr. Ridley and see if they could get some relief at ODOT. Mr. Ridley's indicated that he will work with them. They wanted us to work with the city staff, which we've done. We've met with Dennis Clowers, and we've actually sent a letter agreeing that we will participate in the payment of money for the construction of a light. Now, if the city already is going to do that, we'll take that money and put it on what's a left turn lane that goes into that neighborhood to the south. So what we found was there was a number of concerns that people had, ranged from lighting, and we have a lighting plan that shows that there'll be no excess lighting that will leave our site. They were concerned about making sure that they didn't have any noise issues, so we've agreed that if they want to, we'll put additional berms on the south portion of our property. There were some questions at one time about, is this going to create additional traffic into the neighborhoods? Our traffic engineer does not believe it will. They have done a study, and Mr. Hoffner's here if you all want to hear from him. But most of the traffic that you're going to see is already on Northwest Highway. The traffic that it might entice is those that want to go to a quality facility from their neighborhood and then back into their neighborhood. There are some people here that are in support of this project that live in the neighborhood to the south. When you look at what we're proposing, we, want to thank Councilman Mars and Planning Commissioner Hensley, because they were involved in a lot of meetings, and the neighbors, because even though all of them have not agreed with us, I think most of them have. In fact, the latest protest, or it's not even really a protest, the latest petition that you all see does not say that they want OnQ not to go on the property. The petition just says that they want us to do certain things. And we have no problem. Jim Griffith is the person that's going to come up next with OnQ, and what he's going to tell you is a little bit about OnQ, but also the fact that we have committed to the neighbors that we will work with them. They're going to be our customers in the future, and we want to be a good neighbor. We will go to the Traffic Commission with them when they want certain things. So what we're proposing, if you look at that map, I think you'd be hard-pressed to say that R1 was appropriate, and then the question is, with all the commercial that's on Northwest Highway, what is appropriate? And what we have is a SPUD that limits uses and allows us to build an OnQ. With that, Jim?
Gary, you want to bring Jim up? Yeah, okay, sure.
Thank you very much. My name is Jim Griffith, and I'm here representing OnQ today. And what we're asking is to rezone this piece of property. And I've met with a lot of people, some of you all. The one thing I've not heard is that there should be a house on this piece of property. So obviously R1 is not an appropriate zoning, and we feel like the C3 is appropriate. When we started this process, we met with the city and felt very good about moving forward. And it was a few weeks later that we discovered that several of the neighbors had some issues and some concerns. So we did a neighborhood meeting. And I will have to tell you, after meeting with them, they had some legitimate concerns, no doubt about it. These people have been asking for help at this intersection for years. They haven't got it. But the process is working now. The intersection is being improved. I think it'll be much better for them. From those meetings, we got some suggestions from the neighbors, barming to help with lights and noise, additional landscaping, things like that, and we agreed to do all of that. I also agreed to help participate in the cost of the traffic signal, and I also agreed to participate in the cost of the left turn lane for the westbound traffic. Another thing that I've offered up is, if you're familiar with the site, the drainage project ends on the north side of Northwest Expressway and then continues on the south side of Wilshire. We are going to go in at a cost of around $500,000 and complete that last phase of that drainage project. And that thing will, if you've been by there, I'm sure you have, it's an eyesore and it's not an effective situation right now. So the bottom line of all of that is we support the neighbors, and we have worked with them to try to help this situation, and we will continue to do so. OnCue, let me just tell you briefly about that. OnCue, I've been in the business since 1966. We currently have 39 OnCues. We have, by the end of the year, we will have 10 public fueling CNG locations. We're probably the leader in the state on public fueling with CNG, and we're very proud of that. We think that's something that's going to be good for everybody. We operate safe locations. They're clean, they're convenient, they're friendly. We're well lit. We have LED lighting. It's an additional cost, but it helps on light pollution, plus provides a safe environment for many customers that come in. Another thing we do, just a little out of the ordinary, is we are geothermal. So we're very energy efficient on all of our stores. There's been some concerns about traffic increasing, and so what I did is I went out and I went to the stores I have already, and we looked at the traffic counts before we opened the store, and we looked at the traffic counts after we opened the store. One of the 8 had a little bit more, one of the 8 had a little bit less, the rest of them were flat. We really don't have that big of an effect on traffic. People, as they drive by, they see us, they pull in, they get their fuel, and they go back to where they were going. So with that, I would ask for your approval for this application. I feel it is an appropriate request. The reality is, if I am denied, it's not going to sit vacant. Somebody else is going to go in. Whether they will be as willing to work with the neighbors and everybody, I don't know that. But I thank you for your time, and I would ask for your support on this measure. Thank you.
Mr. Griffin, could you or Dennis identify the left-hand lane that you've offered to help with? The left turn?
Yes, sir. There's actually 2 lanes. One is the your westbound traffic on Northwest Expressway. Okay. There's been some concerns from the neighbors that it's not long enough, and therefore cars block up the other lanes, and so it causes a problem. So it was recommended that we extend, or that be extended. So I went and met with Gary Ridley, and he hooked me up with the right people on the project. That some of the neighbors have been to them now, and I told them that I would help participate in that cost if we can get this thing going. The other one that I had proposed is a decel lane on Northwest Expressway, so that customers can pull off onto the decel lane before they turn into our location, which would also help.
Coming from
traffic.
The west or from the east?
This would be going eastbound.
Going eastbound.
Right.
So a right turn deceleration.
Right.
Line.
What we're proposing is a right turn in, right turn out, and again with the decel lane, that'll keep the flow of traffic good on Northwest Expressway.
Well, Jim, are we going to do either of those with the traffic changes? The city, were we going to do either of those that he's offering to do?
I can't answer where we are on those projects. Maybe Dennis could come in and answer that for us.
No, I don't believe so. You're asking, is the city going to do the decel eastbound lane or the extension of the westbound left turn lane in the traffic signal project that we're doing? No, not that I'm aware of.
The question was about Northwest Expressway. That is ODOT's responsibility. The city doesn't make improvements on Northwest Expressway.
But we're doing adjacent improvements, and then the proposed improvements they're talking about will not be included in our project.
That's correct.
If you would clarify, Dennis, you indicated the participation would be in the traffic light. You also indicated, or I thought you said, or participation on the turn lane on Northwest Highway. But I think what was just said was that you would participate in both of those.
That is correct.
Thank you.
I'm a little unclear. Is there access off Northwest Expressway, or do you have to exit onto, I guess it's Brookside, to get to Wilshire, to get to OnQ?
No, you can get directly from Northwest Expressway.
Okay. And in that right turn lane, if you're heading east?
Right. And again, what we propose is a decel lane so that they can pull off and not hinder traffic and then pull into our location.
Okay. All right. Gary?
I have one question while they're in for either one of them. Why was the SPUD not inclusive of the entire site that you want to do, so that those restrictions on the SPUD would stay with the entire site?
I was not involved when the SPUD was filed. I only got involved when protesters became involved. But the rest of the zoning on the property is straight C3, so allows the use intended. And I think probably the engineers just went with the zoning that was needed on the track that was the bypass parcel, that surplus. But, I mean, if I'd have been doing it, I'd probably just file a little C3 case as opposed to a SPUD.
But the conditions that Mr. Griffin talked about agreeing to, the berming and the light spillage and all that kind of stuff, is in the SPUD, which is in reality just the R1 piece. That wouldn't have to be maintained. That isn't part of the C3 or wouldn't have to be maintained in the C3. Is that correct?
No, I think we can absolutely make part of our SPUD contingent upon the acceleration lane, the berms, and all that on the property adjacent to that R1. We have no problem with enforcement, but your question was why didn't they do the whole site? The rest of it was zone C3, and that's probably why they started. But if you're concerned on enforcement, all the things that we commit to today, we will make contingent upon being able to get a building permit for the OnQ that you see for that whole site.
Then I have a technical question. Is that something that we can put in and that they're held to at some point on the C3 part of this?
J.J. Chambliss Development Services. We can, if Dennis is willing, we'll write in something into the SPUD that will include those off-site improvements and make them part of the SPUD.
Okay. All right.
Dennis, just further on Mayor's question about access from Northwest Highway. In the R1 SPUD, the deceleration lane will provide, by putting that in, will provide the access to the full site from the R1 area. Is there any other access on the C3 currently?
There will be two access points. One back to the west, and that's the deacceleration lane that Jim was talking about, and then one access point on the SPUD area. So there'll be two access points onto Northwest Highway. And we're agreeing that there'll be right turn in and right turn out only. So there'll be adequate access off Northwest Expressway, and we feel with the acceleration lane on the western curb cut, then it'll be easy to get in, easy to get out.
I don't know that it's safe, but can you legally now make a left-hand turn going west across between the median and into the C3 site with the access line up there?
No, there's not a cutover in that area
It's
right
not.
there.
You'd have to make a
You have to go
U-turn
further
around.
up and make, enter to one of the existing cutovers and make a U-turn.
All right, we have some people that have signed up to speak.
I just have one question. The traffic signals that you referenced to, what is the traffic control there at that intersection now?
You mean at Northwest Highway?
Yes.
There's a light at Northwest Highway, and several things have been done. Wilshire's been expanded from a 2-lane to a 4-lane, and the light that we're talking about providing would be a light that would be down on Wilshire to allow the neighbors to get in and out of their neighborhood.
But presently
It's a
light
stop sign that's been there and then taken down and put back up.
But the construction the widening, that's a ODOT project, is that correct? A Wilshire?
No,
I think
that's a bond project that we're doing. That's a good point, Skip, and let me go through this real quick for council that's not aware of it. We're widening Wilshire from Northwest Highway, or actually it's called Brookside Drive, all the way to Rockwells, and that widening is completed. If you're coming eastbound on Wilshire, there's currently a stop sign at Brookside Drive. Now, if you look at that drawing, when you turn off of Northwest Highway and turn south or left if you're westbound, you go a little bit and then you immediately turn left again to get into the neighborhood where that street is right there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's currently a stop sign from eastbound traffic on Wilshire that makes people stop so that people trying to get out of the neighborhood can get out. But there is nothing controlling traffic coming off Northwest Highway trying to turn into the neighborhood. They have to wait for an opening at some point. What we agreed to do at a neighborhood meeting after the traffic study was presented, is there'll be a full stoplight, full lighted intersection at Brookside on Wilshire. So it's just a short ways from Northwest Highway. You're going to hit another traffic signalization intersection. And the timing has to occur so that people turning off Northwest Highway, going up and wanting to turn in the neighborhood will get a left turn signal to let them go into the neighborhood with a protected left turn. And then of course they can flow the other way. And it's a complicated signalization to do in a very short span of distance between Northwest Highway and Brookside Drive. But they tell me it can be done, and the traffic engineers have studied it. That light is going to happen whether OnQ is approved or not. We agreed to do that at the neighborhood meeting. What OnQ has offered is that they're willing to help pay for part of that if their application is approved, because they knew how critical it was. But regardless of that, the signal light is going to happen. And Dennis, if you could give me real quick, you told me the other day a timeline. We are getting ready to start on the signalization project.
Yeah, the street widening is basically complete. The project is not complete. There's a few cleanup items, but the traffic signal at Brookside and Wilshire will be done as a part of the street widening project. Yeah. We won't final the street widening project out until the signal's in.
So the signalization at that Brookside turn will happen shortly. We've got all that going on. So
That's at the same place where there's currently a stop sign.
That's correct. Okay. That's correct. And the neighbors' concern, and I'll let them speak here in just a second, is that I don't know that any of them think that the traffic in and out on Northwest Highway is going to be an issue. It's the exits coming on to Wilshire that they're concerned about as it deals with traffic and so forth. So if you want to have the neighbors start.
Okay.
Mayor.
Jim Kelly. Now, we'll ask everyone to keep their comments to 3 minutes or less, and to the extent they have new information for us, we'd like to hear it. We have less patience for those who just want to say what everyone else has already said, but at the same time, you all have taken your time to come down here, and we want to hear from you. So, Jim, go ahead and get us started.
Thank you. I lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, as many people have, and during that time, We've lived within a stone's throw of maybe hundreds or maybe 1,000 apartment areas.
The Lyrewood
over there,
area, right.
which is a high crime area. And but luckily, over the years, foot traffic from those apartments, have not come through our neighborhood. With a 24-hour convenience service station right there, I'm thinking that people will be taking shortcuts, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids or older will be walking through our neighborhood. And with being 24-hour convenience store, that could be 2 a.m. in the morning. And that has never happened, in our neighborhood during the past 30 years. And I know many other people are concerned about congestion and possible accidents from traffic, but I just wanted you to consider, the change in our neighborhood due to what I think is going to be additional foot traffic, maybe at 2 a.m. in the morning. Thank you.
Where do you live, Jim?
I live on Northwest 75th.
So a couple of blocks up below the map that we're looking at here.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
Nancy Piccolo? Good morning, Nancy. We will need your name and address for the record.
Nancy Piccolo, 6221 Northwest 75th Street.
Okay.
And I don't know, talking about that little R1, I agree there will not be a home on that site, but I look upon it as a little piece of protection for our neighborhood, and I kind of like it the way it is. My husband Gary and I have lived in Brookhaven Addition for 37 years. And in that length of time, we've witnessed a lot of changes in the area. There have been neighbors that have come and gone, but most of them have worked to maintain the proper upkeep of their property, and that kept our values of our homes at a reasonable pace. But the massive apartment complexes on Lyrewood Lane and Wilshire make the outskirts of our neighborhood a high crime area with routine weekly problems. Neighbors have been warned not to be out of their cars in that area any time of the day. Helicopters come over mainly on weekends, but it's a regular process. In fact, the car in which I came this morning, 3 families were represented, and all 3 of them have had their homes broken into over the years from this high crime area. The criminal problems compounded by the rapid commercial growth along Northwest Expressway. It has just boomed, and the entrance to our addition has also become a nightmare because the stop signs that are now on Wilshire are avoided or ignored, and we feel that we're taking our life into our hands every time we pull into our neighborhood. We all gather and tell stories, oh, what happened to you today at that intersection? Any of our friends and family coming to visit us in our homes, they are warned how to maneuver through that area so that they won't be harmed. And so we have a fear of the lives of these people that come to our homes and of the neighbors in our neighborhood. Building a 24-hour on-queue is going to add to the already horrific congestion. On-queue is not the normal business like the bank that was mentioned on 85th and May Avenue. This is a 18-pump, 24-hour company, and it's not needed considering the number of gas stations that are already in existence along the highway from Rockwell to MacArthur. I counted about 5 in existence right now, or 4 or 5 I could think of. We've also been told in a previous meeting that there would be additional traffic in this area that the station would attract. And with the widening of Wilshire, the problem's going to be unbearable. And the foot traffic, as Jim said, from the apartments over into that area are going to cause more problems than security in our area. Choosing another way out of our addition, we would have to go south through the Pines, through Twin Lakes, which we had to do during all this construction. I know those neighbors are not appreciative of having all that traffic on their quiet streets, And certainly, we'll choose that way if we can't get out onto Northwest Expressway if it gets any worse. And it's not fair to the people in those additions.
Nancy, I have some other people I want to hear from. Any closing comments you'd like to make?
Well, I agree it's a poorly designed area, and we, we've supported the MAPS program, which has seen interest in this city and improvement. We want the neighborhoods to be considered too. It can't just be, geared toward one area. It has to include the whole city. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming down. Ellen Cook. Good morning. Ellen, I will need your name and address for the record.
Good morning. Yes, sir. My name is Ellen Cook. My husband Nathan and I live at 7805 Brookside Drive. That is ground zero. We are the house on the corner of Brookside, Wilshire, and then Northwest Highway. We've lived there for 31 years. We've seen lots of stuff. But my husband and I totally support OnQ's application for rezoning. Mr. Griffith, his lawyer, the real estate man, Mr. Kahn, his engineer, have been over backwards to try to accommodate our legitimate neighborhood concerns about the traffic, the foot traffic, and all these things he's already enumerated. He has promised to do. They just said they would even write it into the SPUD or the PUD or whatever it is. We think it's unfortunate that OnQ's application happened at the same time the Wilshire widening project was going on. Wilshire's almost finished. We can't wait to get our stoplight in there because that is a huge problem. But that really has not much to do with OnQ. We appreciate and understand the neighbors, or some of our neighbors' concerns, because some of them were our concerns too. But without a doubt, if OnQ's application is denied, at some point in time, that land will be sold to somebody else. And it could be, I personally don't want living on the corner. I don't want to smell fish frying, Long John Silver's. I don't want a motel to whom the property could have been sold, a 5-story motel. I don't want people looking down in our backyard. So there is no guarantee that any other company is going to be as is going to be as cooperative and sensitive to the neighbor's concern as OnQ has been. So we totally support OnQ, and it's our opinion that they will be a positive addition to our area and will help raise the professional standard for service and excellence in our area. We do have a bunch of gas stations. They are not the quality place that you wouldn't mind going into at 10:30 at night because you ran out of milk. I would not be afraid to go into an OnQ. And furthermore, Mr. Griffith has promised me the cleanest bathrooms in the whole area. I said, I want the nice bathrooms. He said, Ms. Cook, you've got them. Thank you.
Ellen, thanks for coming down.
I might also add, Mr. Mayor, like she said, we've lived there 31 years. When we moved there, we were transferred into Oklahoma City. This was the biggest city. It was big. But if we had wanted to live on to where we wouldn't have somebody right up next to us, we would have bought an acreage. We would have bought in Piedmont. But as we all know, Piedmont has changed. So we live in a city, and we want the city to grow. And we want the very best that we can possibly have. Thank you.
Thanks for coming down. Viola Peters. Morning. We will need your name and address for the record, Viola.
Yes, Viola Peters, 6205 Northwest 77th.
Okay.
I live next door to Ground Zero, Bob and Ellen Cook. I have a concern. I'm opposed to this. It is a high-impact business, and this is just not a destination corner. And, we've gone over and over again how uniquely atypical this intersection is. We've got Wilshire Northwest Expressway, 10 yards. We've got the only entrance into our housing addition. And I know that something else may be built there, but let it be low impact, or maybe it should even be considered that the city absorbed this property. It is what, the intersection is what it is, and it's inherently dangerous. And you can parade all the traffic experts out that you want, but an 18-pump gas station is going to make it even more dangerous. And those are just the facts. It is what it is. I'm not even really, I'm kind of even opposed to the traffic light. Can you imagine turning left from May Avenue onto Wilshire and go 10 yards and have to stop? The left-hand turn lane from Northwest Expressway going onto Wilshire is longer than the distance between Northwest Expressway and Wilshire and this light that they're proposing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, but that's not what we're here about.
Okay, so my thing is the land use rule is the standard. But I propose to you that the safety of our community, the safety of motorists at large, takes precedence over any land use rule. I'm also concerned about nefarious activity taking place in a parking lot of a 24-hour facility. You know, it attracts all kinds of things. Nothing good happens after 2 o'clock in the morning. And so I propose to you, I beg of you to please approve something that's low impact or to absorb this property from the city. I think the burden on our community would be greater if they built than it would be on this multi-million-dollar corporation if they went and found them another location. Thank you.
If I can make a quick comment specific to her conversation, Mayor. I understand your concern, but if you could see the list of what's allowed in C3, which is a current zoning, I think you'd be surprised. And when you keep saying approve a low impact, if this is denied and somebody wants to buy just the C3 part of it, they could build anything on the property in the C3 list without coming to us. Right. That's already approved. So the ability to, at any point in the future, to demand low impact in that area doesn't exist with the current zoning.
Well, perhaps this is something that the city just needs to absorb, you know, this piece of property. This is not a destination corner. People don't get in their car to drive to this corner. And I believe that you're our council member, and you're probably well aware of the area that's around there. And I just think that, you know, I'm not sure that anything there at all would be appropriate.
I understand your concern, but I just want to make sure that you and others in the audience understood that if this is denied today, there's still not a way to limit that to low impact use. It can be anything that's on the C3 list.
Well, I have to research what the protocol is for, you know, the city absorbing that or just making that, you know, non-buildable area at all. So, but thank you for your time. And once again, I just, you know, I think the burden would be greater on us than on them. Thank you.
Thanks, Vela. Mike Voorhees. Morning, Mike. We'll need your name and address.
Mike Voorhees, the office is 7701 Southwestern, Suite 201, Oklahoma City, 73139. I'm here on behalf of 3 of the members of the community in their opposition, and I won't belabor the point, but I would like to emphasize the traffic congestion. First and foremost, this particular piece of property doesn't, as it sits, cause any additional traffic congestion in the area. Such an intense use as an 18-pump convenience store or gas station is going to significantly contribute to the intersections. Understanding that part of the property is already C3, we're talking about an increased use. We're talking about some significant increased automobile traffic, potentially left turn off of Northwest Expressway into the on-queue, making this a destination. The configuration is unique. We all agree with that. The problem is intense use and the increased traffic into the area, not just the Brookside to the south, but the entire area. You've heard from some of the other neighbors, some of the other members of the community, and I won't belabor the point, but I don't see how you can fit this in the Oklahoma City plan when we're trying to make areas safe for bicycling, pedestrians, and we're increasing potentially significantly traffic in the area.
Thanks, Mike. Yes?
May I just make that, or clarify something? I've heard several people talk about an 18-pump station. It's my understanding that it's 9 bays where you can pump on either side.
That's my understanding.
Is that correct?
So it's
it is not an 18-pump station.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
But you pump from either side. You're correct. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Thank you.
Voorhees, if I could real quick.
Yes, sir.
Your client owns the service station and convenience store on the northwest corner of this intersection.
One of them does, yes, sir, one of them.
And to get to that, you have one of two ways. You can come off of Northwest Highway if you go past the light westbound, or you can turn into the neighborhood and then immediately turn back into your service station.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
So the concerns about traffic are not necessarily the traffic that's going to your client's service station.
The concerns are it's already a congested area, and right now this isn't contributing because it's a vacant piece of property.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Ken Berry? Hi, Ken. We'll need your name and address for the record, please.
Ken Berry, 7513 Clayton Drive. I'm not at Ground Zero. I'm a couple blocks south on the Wilshire, south of Wilshire, so I guess I'm in the fallout area. I've lived there for 20 years. For those 20 years, this has been a very dangerous intersection, congested traffic. You can see from the map there are 5 streets hitting right there. The only way to get out of our area from the south is this one road. That's the only street, Brookside Drive, into Oklahoma City. There's a serpentine path out into War Acres, which they have threatened to close if they get more traffic down from the Oklahoma City area. But this is the only way our community can get out of our blocks, is this one street on Brookside Drive. And that's what we're concerned about. We've been trying to get some improvement for years, and finally, the city has decided to widen the street on Wilshire and to give us a traffic light, which would greatly improve our ability to get out of our communities. Now, you're going to take all of this away by making congested traffic at the same location. We've had a traffic study that was presented to the Zoning Commission. They said the Wilshire traffic is going to be increased by 40% by this service station. We've got a service station across the street on Northwest Highway. We've got one on Wilshire. This will be the 3rd one on the corner. A 40% increase in traffic. People are going to be coming off of Northwest Highway, getting their gas, then coming back on Wilshire to avoid the traffic light on Northwest Highway. That's just increasing the traffic. It will be terrible. The commission, the Zoning Commission, voted 4-3 at the last meeting to reject the zoning request. It was not sent as a recommendation to this committee because there was not a majority, but that's the way they voted. And I would appreciate your consideration of what they voted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Sir, while you're up there, I know you were referring to getting out of the neighborhood.
And getting into the neighborhood, too.
All right. On that point, does the recommendation that was made earlier, or the consideration that a left-hand turn lane going south onto Brookside, does that help?
It does help. The traffic signal that would give a left-turn signal to us would certainly help us, but it doesn't help all the backed-up traffic there. You're going to have a traffic light Northwest Highway and a traffic light at Brookside and Wilshire. And so, it's 200 feet between those 2 traffic lights. and you're going to carve increased traffic that's going to back up there. They're going to try to synchronize those two lights so that traffic will flow better. But you're still going to have the cars.
But that lane, that left turn lane, is going to take some of the...
That will take some of it. But it would be a better situation if we had the traffic light and the left turn lane and no additional traffic from a service station.
You talk about only having one way out. You actually had two at one time, and the neighborhood petitioned some years ago to close the second one. Is that true?
In not my neighborhood, but in the neighborhood south of us, that's true. We did have another exit, and they decided to block that off that went into to War Acres.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Joan Woolley.
My name is Joanne Woolley. I live on 7412 Clayton Drive. My concerns are not so much with on-cue coming in, but it's the traffic that is really the difficulty. And there's two things that I have not heard mentioned. One is you notice when you come out going north on Brookside, you notice that little triangle there. They have built that just recently. That has a ramp on it that goes off onto Wilshire Street. It also blocks Wilshire. It blocks Brookside somewhat, making it difficult to turn left off at the Northwest Expressway, cross Wilshire, and come onto Brookside. It also makes it difficult coming off of Brookside and getting onto the Northwest Expressway because we have to make a sharp turn around that. The other thing that I have not heard mentioned is the bicycle and hiking path that crosses the Northwest Expressway at that point. And I understand the bicycle trail is going to be lanes on Wilshire. They have put a sidewalk there, which I don't know if that's going to be for the bicycles or not, but it is making it more difficult for bicycles to cross at that intersection. And also I think that the increased traffic will be, I don't know when the traffic study was done, but that intersection has been torn up. They finally got it paved, but it was torn up for over a year. And one traffic study I saw was done in July while it was torn up. But it also, there is an exit on Kilpatrick Turnpike that comes off onto Wilshire, and it's several miles south of the Northwest Expressway, Wilshire, and I understand that Wilshire is going to be double lane all the way to the highway. That will increase the traffic at that intersection, making it much more difficult, not only for our neighborhood, but also for the bicycle trail.
Okay. Thanks. Alan Harris.
Mr. Mayor, I'm Alan Harris, 7405 Clayton Drive in the Brookhaven edition. I'm in favor of on-cue. I believe we could do a lot worse at that intersection, and that land is for sale, and anything else could go in there. I doubt that anyone else trying to go in there and put a commercial enterprise would be as interested and cooperative with us as Mr. Griffith has. He's agreed to help pay for the traffic signalization at Brookside and Wilshire, that very atypically dangerous intersection you've been hearing a lot about, and that's probably an understatement. I've never seen an intersection with a 75-degree curve right in the middle of it before. He's also agreed to pay for the extension of the left turn lane on the Northwest Highway westbound at Wilshire, which is also dangerous, way too short. I met with Senator Holt and Paul Green of ODOT the other day and conveyed to them Mr. Griffith's willingness to pay for that if they'll authorize it. They said they would authorize it. So, I think we have good signs here that he will be a good neighbor. And on the remaining points that the city has so far turned us down on, that is a local traffic-only sign to discourage traffic coming down Brookside, 25-mile-an-hour sign, dangerous intersection signs on Wilshire. He's also agreed to support us on those. I might say on the local traffic-only sign, I'm puzzled by the city's reluctance. They say they can't give it to us because they have to have police come out there and enforce it. So I drove up in Ms. Salyer's district, I believe it is, over on Walker, and every intersection from 38th to 49th has a no-through street sign. None of those are dead ends. There are no police enforcing the no-through street signs. Why? As the Nichols Hills Police tell me about a similar sign they have, those are self-enforcing. We don't need police to enforce our local traffic only sign. Please give us our no right turn local traffic only sign, Gary, and a no through street sign, which will help prevent the dumping of just thousands of cars down through there. It's just going to require the city to come out and do a lot of work on Brookside Drive. So I support it, but I think the city needs to do more to make the intersection really safe for all of us. Thank you.
Alan, I appreciate it, but I think you just annexed half of Sam's ward to me.
I'm sorry. Did I put you in the wrong ward? I'm sorry.
Thank you for coming down. Gary, next step. Okay.
Well, as you can see, I don't know that there's a good answer all the way around on this. I do believe that the neighborhood concerns about the in and out at Brookside are absolutely valid and have been for years. I've lived out that way. I've worked out that way a lot of my career, and that is a concern and has been. I'm sorry that the Wilshire improvements seem to have upset a number of people in that neighborhood, and I'm a little confounded by that because we're not doing anything but improving the street system, and but yet some of them seem to be very upset that we four-laned Wilshire in that area. The agreement that we made to put in the traffic signal at Brookside and Wilshire was made in an attempt to try to help that problem, and that's going to happen whether this is approved today or not. We will be putting that light in. You heard Mr. Clowers talk about that light. So the left turn going in hopefully will help that situation. I do believe that OnQ's willingness to help DOT expand the left turn lane for westbound on Northwest Highway is going to help the situation because it backs up Northwest Highway in that area every night at the peak times, trying to get back into the neighborhoods. I don't believe OnQ is what people refer to as a destination. I don't think that unless you're going one way or the other on Northwest Highway or one way or the other on Wilshire that you're going to pull into OnQ. I don't think you're going to come from another part of town just to come to this OnQ. But yes, it will bring traffic into the site itself that there's nothing there now, so there's nothing to pull into. But I think they will. The traffic they're going to capture is already on one of those roads anyway. There is currently a gas station and convenience store at the intersection of Lyrewood and Wilshire. So it's not like there's not some place for the people in the apartment complexes to go already, and I'm sure they utilize that to some extent. One of the biggest factors, as I pointed out earlier, is that the majority of this site is C3 and could be utilized in a long list of things that are allowed in C3. And if that happens, if we deny OnQ today and Mr. Dewar sells that property to another entity, they can build anything that's on that list on that site without going through any approval at any point. It's a C3. As long as they're putting in something that fits in C3, they can go get put their plans in, get their permit, and start building, and it won't be going through planning, and it won't be coming to this council. So you'd have to live with whatever somebody wants to put in on that list that is currently C3. I do believe OnQ is a good neighbor. I've heard from people around the city because of this application. I've heard from people that live next to other OnQs in favor or encouraging me to understand what a good neighbor OnQ is. It's well lit, it's kept clean, they don't have any problems with the riffraff hanging around in it. OnQ does a good job of that. So I really believe that the majority of this discussion centers around the traffic issues. I think it really centers around, will OnQ bring something there that's not there now. And I do think they will. I think, let me back up. I think the only traffic that OnCue is going to bring that's not there now is people that might be going west on Northwest Highway, but they want to use OnCue, which means they've got to get in the left turn lane and turn left onto Brookside and use the entrance on Wilshire to get into OnCue, because they don't want to keep going west till they get to the next turnaround and make a U-turn and come back. I think that's what you're going to capture with this application that is not currently there now. But I don't know that it's going to draw people that aren't going down Northwest Highway already anyway. We have an issue on that site with drainage. It's a given that anybody that wants to build on it is going to have to do something. But I think that OnCue is proposing a significant improvement in the drainage issue and that creek that goes through there, and the unkept look and the unkept part of all that wooded area that's going through there that we've had to take issue with from time to time on that property. It's really hard. Let me back up. The advantage that I have, and I think my fellow council members have, is that we have seen what happens when you deny what you think is a good project because of the neighbor's concern, and then something goes in that nobody has any control over, so to speak. And you end up with the neighbors coming forward and say, why did you let that happen? Or now we wish we'd have gone back with the other one. And I think that's a possibility in this case when you look at what could be built on that C3 piece of property. I think it's a real possibility. On the other hand, these neighborhood and their issues are real, and they are concerned about that. And they've been concerned about that. Those apartments are not going away if we deny this, and the traffic's not going to go away if we deny this, and the whatever you think is being caused by the occupants of those apartments are not going to go away if we deny this. Is this going to be a lightning rod that's going to attract people out of there? I don't know that any of us know that. I'd be a little bit curious on whether they're going to bypass one that's already existing and they're used to just to come down to OnCue, knowing that OnCue is much more well-lit, much more supervised and kept clean and so on and so forth. I'm a little bit concerned about that, that is a valid argument. But I just get to the point where I think if the signalization helps with the traffic, which we think it will, and I've had numerous conversations with Mr. Clowers, our Public Works Director. I've driven that thing a lot, and I think the signalization is going to be, I'm quite interested, I know they can do it, but it's going to be quite interesting to see how that timing works out between the Northwest Highway light and the new light that we're putting in to keep that flow moving. But all the traffic engineers, including our own staff, tell me that that can happen, and it will happen, and it will improve that flow in and out. If the traffic issues, we will put the signs up. Well, I shouldn't say we will. I can't demand it. I can't go out and dig the holes for them. But if a no-through street or a local traffic-only sign will benefit that, I don't see why we wouldn't put that up. One of the letters asked for rumble strips on Wilshire to slow the traffic down. Well, unfortunately, we don't put rumble strips or speed bumps on city streets. Those are all on private streets. So a rumble strip or a speed bump is not going to happen on Wilshire itself. So, but the signs, I don't see why we couldn't agree to do that, because in effect, it is local traffic only unless you go out through War Acres, and we can't utilize another city and say, well, yeah, you've got another way of getting out and justify that at some point. But I get to the point where I truly believe with the things that the OnCue has agreed to, the berming, the helping with the left turn lane on Northwest Highway, fixing the drainage issue, all the other things. I just don't know that I am convinced that you'll get a better project later on, a better community willingness to help the community and so forth than ONCU is. The traffic is going to be there. One lady said it just is what it is, and that's true. It is what it is, but I'm not sure ONCU is going to increase it significant enough to turn down what I think will be a good community spot there and something that will be beneficial to that whole area. I've received a lot of emails, and granted, they may not be from your neighborhood, but I've received a lot of emails and phone calls from people that said, please approve it. We'd like to have a nice ONCU on Northwest Highway. So the people outside your community, there are some of them that are supportive of this. So I think that the people with ONCU have worked through this. I'm sorry for the long dialogue, Mayor, and so forth. But I think at this point in time, with what we're going to do for the traffic signal and what ONCU is willing to do in their process, I'll move approval.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Sam, you want to say something before we vote?
Yes, and I want to just say on behalf of Councilman Mars that it's been obvious that he struggled with this for a long number of months, and I can vouch for as late as 8 o'clock last night, he had still not made up his mind. Been struggling with this for a long, long time. In support of this, I would just ask what conditions to do the most we can to protect the residential area to the south in terms of the signage that Gary has suggested. I guess that has to be traffic commission, but can we in any way condition some signage and a left-hand turn lane into Brookside as part of this SPUD? Or can we just give direction to that?
What do you mean the left turn lane? Are you talking about from Northwest Expressway?
No. Well, it's
I'm not sure. You're wanting a condition of that the extension of that will happen on this?
The left-hand turn lane going south into Brookside. It's going to get...
That's a DOT project. That's on DOT highway, and
not on the expressway. I thought we also, there was an additional suggestion. After you get off Northwest Highway.
That's happening in the signal line. They'll get a left turn arrow and a lane in there. Well, I don't know about the lane.
Right? Will they get the lane?
Is it an arrow, a straight arrow, or is it an actual left turn lane?
I know we got a protected left turn arrow. I don't really recall. Mike, is there a? I don't think there's a separate lane there.
Can we get a lane, or can the configuration of the intersection accommodate a left-hand
The current configuration as constructed today cannot accommodate an additional lane for that left turn movement. What we will have out there is an exclusive left turn signal head movement. It will be a 5-section head. Well, actually, I guess it will be 4-section with the flashing arrow. But there will be a permissive phase, but also a protected phase to allow that movement directly into the neighborhood. And that would be, I want to clarify that intersection will be tied and run off the signal controller that is existing on Northwest Expressway in Wilshire to keep that timing. Because you are correct, it is pretty intricate, but it will operate well.
Could the street configuration be changed to accommodate?
Councilman, I think in order to provide the left turn lane from Wilshire onto Northwest Expressway, I don't think there's physically enough room to put a westbound to southbound left turn lane butted up against it. I don't think there's physically enough space.
I'm sorry, that's what I thought I understood one of the suggestions was.
There will be a left turn phase, but no lane.
Councilman, when we talked about the left turn lane, it exists now, but it's not deep enough. And my client went out and talked to Mr. Ridley, and we think we can get them to extend it, and that's what we're going to participate in regard to.
He's talking about an entirely different.
I understand. I just want to make sure that when I was talking, that's why I was talking about the one that's existing, but we're going to extend it back to where it'll be more functional.
All right. Thanks, Dennis. JJ?
Clarify if that motion includes the technical evaluations or not.
Yes,
And
it does.
there's just two of them I'd like to discuss on the technical evaluations. Number one, we have two access points on Northwest Highway, and we've agreed, and we want you to make this part of your motion. On the west access point, we're going to have a de-acceleration lane, and there'll also be right turn in and right turn out only. And with regard to signage, we would like to put up the typical on-cue sign, which is 20 feet tall. In the TEs, what planning staff has put in is your standard ground sign, 8 feet. Well, all the signs around there, and this sign will be within that R1 shown area, so it'll be on Northwest Highway. We'd like to put our typical sign.
Didn't that ground sign at 8 feet high allow 100 square foot?
That's what the staff has in their technical evaluation, but that wouldn't be what OnCue's typical sign was.
How much larger is it?
It's 20 feet tall.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
What's the typical size, square foot
The
size?
size is, it's 20 foot tall, and it's about 7 foot wide. It's a monument sign.
And
It's not on
Planning Commission
poles.
was suggesting 8 foot high, 100 square foot max?
Planning staff. Right. Planning staff had in the TEs a ground sign, and we just think Northwest Highway, we'd like to have the standard OnCue sign.
I'm a little concerned about that, Dennis, and I'll tell you why. Because that sign would be competing with all the lights, the traffic signals that we're going to be dealing with, not only the existing ones at Northwest Highway and Brookside, but the new ones we're going to be putting in. You're going to have this OnCue sign with people trying to figure out which stoplight they've got to obey because it is so close. And I am a little concerned. I'm a lot concerned about having a 20-foot sign up.
I can move that back to the west if that helps with your concern.
I'd like to, Gary, I'd like to hear from staff on this, because this is also part of the beautification corridor. And we're I think, addressing some of those concerns in this signage.
What it really comes down to is Planning Commission has an adopted policy when it comes to signs, and as staff, we're required to recommend 8-foot, 100-square-foot monument signs. And if an applicant wants more, he has to come to the Planning Commission and justify more. So that's where the TE came from.
But,
okay, Brian?
I have a question. On the sign, could the sign be placed in the C3 area and built like you have there?
Yes, we could.
So actually, you could have that sign, you would just have to move it back into the C3 area?
That is correct.
Okay.
And if that makes Councilman Mars more comfortable.
I'd be very concerned about a 20-foot sign right on that corner, yes.
Okay, then we will put that in the C3 area, not in the SPUD area. Okay.
What about the easement? Has it been submitted? The easement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
All right, we have a motion to say. Any other comments or questions from council?
I had a question. First of all, I would like to commend my fellow councilman, Mr. Gary Mars, for his obvious, very in-depth concern about the citizens in this area, and also as it relates to business. I, too, have lived in this area. I remember when Lyrewood Apartments was one of the icon apartments in Oklahoma City. I have always been a little concerned about that traffic that turns off of Northwest Expressway into the housing addition, and now with the ongoing construction of the widening of the highway. I seriously feel the pain and the concern of those individuals who live in that neighborhood. It's kind of interesting. The number of stop signs or the number of traffic engagements that an individual is going to have to go through to get to the farthest house that's situated in that neighborhood, to the one that's, as is stated on Ground Zero. It's really kind of amazing how this is going to ultimately work out. And I got a report from, and I believe it's the traffic engineering consultant staff, and one of the options was option number 5 or option number 4 as it relates to the traffic counts and the signage as far as signals is concerned. Was that something that was discussed with the owners and the neighborhood that ultimately created some type of compromise?
I have to apologize to you. I actually was not in attendance at that meeting, but these options were presented to both city staff and the neighbors as well, and subsequent meetings were held, and the signalization of the Brookside intersection was ultimately the most viable and desired solution out of the 5 that were presented.
And was that agreed with the neighbors, I mean, the residents that was there?
All of those options were presented. Dennis and I were there, and the traffic engineer actually did a PowerPoint presentation, was able to show the flow of traffic, that showed the lights going on and off, and showed the traffic and everything else. And we talked about all of those options, and the full signalization that you see that we're putting in now is a result of what the neighbors said was the option they wanted at that meeting.
Yeah, that intersection was fully modeled and visually shown. So.
All right, ready to vote?
Mr. Mayor, could I possibly focus just a minute more on Mr. Bowman's point about our lack of a left turn lane coming down into Wilshire?
It doesn't have anything to do with the on-cue zoning, does it?
Well, yes, it does, because the whole you're interested in the whole traffic safety situation at that neighborhood. And
all
I
right,
just
go
wanted
ahead.
to point out that eventually there's probably going to have to be a left turn lane there. I don't think we're going to be able to go without it. I don't know if that means you're going to have to move over and take some land out of that triangle and readjust the intersection light or not. But I think you're going to end up having to have a left turn lane there.
Well, I understand your concern, but you've also got to remember that the majority of that triangle, I think we have curved over to the city limits, I believe. The rest of it's in War Acres. Is that correct, Dennis? Do you recall that right offhand?
I didn't understand your question. I'm sorry.
Well, he's talking about pushing the east side of Brookside over so that you could create a left turn lane into the neighborhood, and I'm thinking that we're right at the city limits line on that east side of our paving project anyway.
I believe that we are.
War Acres would consent to that. They want this right. And we have just as many War Acres people affected in our 1,100 residents as we do Oklahoma City people.
Well, I think your point might be worth noting, but we cannot at this time redesign the 4-laning of Wilshire. Sometime in the future that may be necessary, and I would add that I expect traffic on Wilshire to increase just because of the 4-laning, and I think the woman who noted that this is access to the turnpike, even though it's 4 miles away, that's real. I mean, that is going to increase traffic. I don't know that on-cue is going to increase traffic on Wilshire, especially if there's an entrance off Northwest Expressway. The vast majority of people are going to come off Northwest Expressway to this facility. I think we're ready to vote. Everybody ready? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Dennis, before you leave, I'd like to revisit the item before, the one before. I know your client's gone and some of your other people are gone, but I pulled the trigger on that a little bit quick. I don't want to make a motion to rescind or do anything, but I'd like to discuss it for a second if we could.
Okay.
Maybe we can let them clear out a little bit. Come on up. You can hear me. I think I pulled the trigger a little bit too quickly because I didn't ask about the textual evaluation.
It comes right here.
And I just, if we could, maybe if I could get some clarity with regard to that, we wouldn't have to, I wouldn't have to undo it, do it again.
The War Acre City line goes right across here.
Would you repeat your concern? I didn't.
Yeah.
Your concern.
Well, my concern is when I just made the motion to approve, I did not include in it the technical evaluations. And as I recall some of the conversation, I'm not sure we even addressed that. And I pulled the trigger a little bit too quickly.
Councilman, the only TE that was in the report was to delete track 2, and I hope we convince you that track 2 should be kept within the zoning based on the considerations that Tim Johnson provided on, protection and the fact that we're next to a highway and we have residential on the east side. So, from our standpoint, the perfect stopping place is at the, edge of where the plat exists, which is the edge of what we're asking for on the zoning. And as Mr. Johnson indicated, we have water, and with regard to this tract, it's 1 acre tracts residential on the east side, and we're really talking about just 3 acres, and those 3 acres you would have to have the detention and protection, and Mr. Johnson, as an engineer, indicated from his opinion this wouldn't cause any problem on the West Elm Creek.
How unusual is that, to do it that way? Do we have other examples where we've done that in the city?
Well,
in one of these environmental areas, have we done it where we've waived that and let you use some other system to do that?
Well, I think you'd have 2 options. I think here what you have to recognize is the plat falls within, an area that's adjacent to the West Elm Creek area. Can it be done? Absolutely. I mean, Mr. Johnson is the engineer.
No, I'm not asking if it can be. What I'm asking is do we have other examples where we've done that before, where we've taken an area that's supposed to be environmentally protected and saying we're going to do it another way? Can you give me another example?
I don't have another example, but your plan contemplates it. Your plan says that, if you meet certain standards, then you can provide for development.
The other part of the other technical evaluation, number 2, would add section 9.16. Is what? Discuss that with me.
That was a common area comment that you'd agreed to previously.
Yeah, you agreed to that one.
I'm not sure what you're even asking for. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we don't have a problem with that.
And you submitted the easement?
Yes.
The other thing, back to the body of it, as I look back through it, it's my understanding that things were added to what normally is permitted in rural, commercial, or whatever that category is you're talking about. Is that right?
That's correct. We have some uses like a sit-down restaurant. We don't have any drive-through restaurants. We have the ability to have a sit-down restaurant, and you can have some retail sales and services. But that's in track 1 and 2. And then track 2, there's some additional uses that are deleted.
Can you've got your application there. Read for me what you added to the rural commercial zoning. Now I can't find it.
Right. These are all the uses.
Okay.
Track.
Is that project on 2?
Okay. In tract 2,
is it in section 8.11? Is that where
8.2.1?
Okay. These are the ones you added?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just for track 2?
These are the only uses that you can have for track 2.
I guess I'm not fine. Would these have been permitted under the rural zoning category you're asking for?
No. These are added in addition
to that.
Councilman White. Yes, sir. And you'll notice we didn't provide for drive-through restaurants and those kinds. You can have a sit-down restaurant, you can have medical services, you can have retail sales, you can have an administrative office, business support, child care center. So we thought those were appropriate for...
Well, give me a general overview of then what rural commercial would have permitted you to do.
I'm going to let staff, rural commercial.
I don't have the list with me, but it's generally light commercial, gas, things that would support the rural residents of the area, light commercial uses, nothing heavy.
In fact,
no industrial, no manufacturing.
The description on rural commercial is that it's intended for the residents within a close proximity. And so
does it say that in the
definition?
In the definition?
And what we're looking at here is 100 acres that are already...
No, I understand. I mean, that's not a good definition of what ought to go on a highway. I mean, I'll buy that. I think I'm okay with it. I did not realize. I guess I hadn't looked that closely. You'd think of the area that I represent, I'd have some understanding of what rural commercial was, but I'm without a clue as to a definition for it, other than what I just heard.
If he's got his code at the front, you have your code with you?
I think so.
Move on to item 8D then. Moving on to item 8D, and Police Chief Bill City is here. This is a public hearing. Do we need to visit this item anymore today, or are we just moving this item along? This is the housekeeping issue that the police chief introduced. Okay. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. On item 8D, and this is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8E? All right, how about a motion? Second. Cast your votes. Item 8E passes unanimously. Then item 8F is a public hearing regarding a long list of unsecured structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8F? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Moves us to item 8G. I understand we're good to go on item 8G, which is collective bargaining with the Fraternal Order of Police. Comments or questions?
I did just have one quick question, maybe for Kathy. The drug testing policy talks about designated facilities that we use. Do we have a contract? Does the city have a contract with someone that we?
Yes. Yeah, we have a contracted lab that we use for drug testing. I think it's through St. Anthony's.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Cast your votes on 8G, and it passes unanimously. Item 8H is a salary continuation, public safety. Second. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And item 8I is another salary continuation in public safety.
Move the item.
Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8J, I understand we do need executive session?
Yes.
All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. That item is moved to executive session.
Mayor?
Yes?
Could I back up to, I guess this would be an issue of dilapidated structures. Mr. Locke was here. If I could just add is that permissible?
Sure.
To address just an issue that have been confronted, that I've been confronted with in reference to.
So you're not asking about any specific issue today, just a question for Charles?
Well, it's a specific issue, but not one of these that's on, but it's under, I think it would fall up under the issue of dilapidated.
Okay, let's see if we can run Charles down if he hadn't already left the building.
He's probably left.
Well, looks like he may have escaped.
If not, we can move on.
No, here
he is.
Okay.
Charles, no specific question about any of the issues listed today, but Councilman Kelly had a question in general about dilapidated structures.
Charles, I've been confronted by several residents as it relates to properties that have been burned to the ground, and the question is, why does it take so long for these properties to be removed, or for the debris and destruction to be removed after, it's a burn down?
I can answer that.
Well, actually, the same statutes apply. When we bring it forward, we have to prepare for the agenda. We have to notify all the mortgage holders plus the owner. The 30-day statute from the state is still in effect also.
Is that state law?
Yes.
And that's basically to notify the owner that the property is burned down?
And any mortgage holders that have an interest, a monetary interest in the property, any owners plus any mortgage holders.
Before there can be any removal of the structure?
Before we could remove it. We notify the owner as soon as we get a complaint on it. That goes through the process, and that notice will go out to the owner. The owner probably knows that. The same criteria does not exist for the owner. Actually, all he would need to do is get a permit to remove it if an owner is doing it.
But if it is in a situation where it is causing a safety concern for individuals in the community, do we still have to wait 30 days?
For it to come through our office, yes, we would have to meet that 30-day criteria after after the council as a whole approves the condemnation proceedings. Now, we could probably work it as a safety hazard, but it would not come through our office as this, as a dilapidated structure.
But if it's a safety hazard on the face of it, what is the alternative that your office has to address the issue?
Well, our office would not address it. Actually, that would probably come through the Public Works Director as a safety hazard, and he may be able to at that point. An example of that was when they had the fire in Bricktown. The Public Works Director at that point immediately had somebody, start knocking down that building. But it would not come through our office as a dilapidated structure that would be presented to y'all.
Another difference on that, Councilman, is that if you don't follow the statutory process that Charles goes through, the city can't place the cost of the removal as a lien against the property.
Yes.
And that it's the statute that provides a 30-day after you make your declaration, then the statute gives the owner of the property 30 days to remove it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Pat, any comments from council?
No, Your Honor, thank you. Nothing.
All right. Skip, anything else?
Yes. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Douglas High School Trojans for their victory of the state championship on Saturday night in Stillwater, Oklahoma, against Wagner, Oklahoma. And this morning we recognized the first females to be a part of the city, Oklahoma City Police Department. And from 1955 to now, I would like to acknowledge and to make it part of the record that we as a city go forth to recognize these individuals in some way of a monument or a statute that will be a historical mark of this city for everyone to see in a place that really showcases the history of Oklahoma City. And I think that this is a historical monument that, in light of the fact that we have another historical statement of women's accomplishments in the state of Oklahoma with the first governor that will soon be sworn in as a female, I just want to see the city of Oklahoma City take an opportunity to recognize the first 6 females for this city in law enforcement in a way that will always be standing for citizens to see and recognize, you know, the accomplishments of these individuals and the legacy that they laid and the foundation for others that became members of the Oklahoma City Police Department. Thank you.
May?
Just very quickly, I want to congratulate the Hispanic Chamber for a really successful Christmas banquet. It was completely sold out at the Sheridan, and they had a fabulous crowd, so congratulations to them.
Brian? Pete?
I, along with Sam and Larry, attended the, and Gary attended the Retired Firefighters Christmas event last night, and it's always I guess it probably tells something about my age that I'm more comfortable around people that have been retired for 20 years than I am people that are still fighting fires. But it's always a good experience. See a lot of people, a lot of friends I've known for a long, long time. It's always a good experience.
Right. Larry?
I'd just like to comment also on what Meg was talking about, that David Castillo gave a very visionary talk about what was going to happen next year with the Hispanic Chamber, and they've got some exciting things in line, so that was very gratifying to hear. I also got to attend this past week the groundbreaking for the Buchanan Elementary School Maps for Kids project. The neighbors out in Corbin Park and Musgrave Pennington, I think will be excited with the plans that are now moving forward into construction, with the completion date of February 2012 for that project. Tonight at 7 o'clock, Ben Davis and Kim Lowe have a third of the planning meetings for the SNI initiative that Wand and the city staff are doing at the Windsor Hills Elementary School. Again, 7 o'clock tonight. I hope all the neighbors that are involved in the Wand area will be able to come and be a part of that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm. Sam? All right. Gary?
Well, I'll echo what Pete said. It's kind of a mixed blessing when I go to the retirees' Christmas dinner, because most of the people there still consider me the young pup. And they let me know that quite frequently as I walk through the room, but it's always good to see them. I want to congratulate Mike McAuliffe and the River Parade that happened Saturday night. We were quite surprised with the combination of the cold weather and the Big 12 championship game being on TV. We worried about the crowd, but we had a good turnout. We had a good number of boats there, and I think everybody had a good time, and it was another good event for the holiday season downtown. And lastly, I appreciate all my fellow counselors' patience during the recent zoning deal. It's something I struggled with. I know most of you came up this morning and said, where are we at? And I had to say, I don't know. But it's that kind of discussion, I think, that helps everybody understand what's going on and move forward with that. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Gary. We have a couple of presentations under city manager reports.
Yes, the first one we have is Eric Winger, the MAPS program manager, is here to update you on MAPS 3.
Okay. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to bring this presentation to you. We've obviously had a considerable amount of work that's begun since the sales tax collections started on April 1st, and today I have a lot of progress to show you on each of those projects. There are 8 total. There's $777 million, and this is not new news to you. The sales tax collections just shy of 8 years, and we are well underway. About $49 million has been collected to date, and so we are slightly above those target projections, and so that's very encouraging as we look forward into the next several years in collecting the total. We have our 11-member Citizens Oversight Board. They've had several meetings thus far. We also have the 8 subcommittees. About half of those have had their first. The Convention Center has had 2 meetings, and then we will have the 3 that have been recently appointed by this council next week. And so by middle of next week, each of the subcommittees will at least have had 1 meeting, if not be having their second and potentially their 3rd meetings here this month. Since April, we've actually been very busy in the MAPS office, and as most of you know, we're continuing to manage the MAPS for Kids projects. We've also engaged the additional work with the school district for their 2007 bond issue with gyms and classrooms. We've attained some district staff that are helping manage some of those district projects that are the gyms and the classrooms, but we've also engaged some additional staff in the MAPS office just specifically for the MAPS 3 projects over the summer. We are looking now also to engage some additional project managers as we look forward into the next year starting some of those projects. We recently finished the program consultant negotiations, and you had an item on your agenda this morning for ADG, and so we will quickly proceed with the program consultant. And their first item of business is going to be develop the MAPS 3 implementation plan, and it, again, is going to provide us that additional detail. It's going to help us further understand the conceptual budgets and the scopes of work for each of those 8 projects. It's also going to propose a priority of those projects in an order that they'd go in by phase, to be bringing that back to council so that we have a good timeline on what to expect over the next 10 years to implement the program. We are looking to have the program implemented in about a 10-year time frame, but we plan to all have this plan completed that I mentioned this spring of 2011. When we look at the park, we actually have several things that are underway. It's a $130 million budget. The Upper Park properties are already under acquisition. This was some of the early work that the council gave us some direction on this summer. The demolition of the old Federal Post Office is now underway with the approval of the contract today. And so that will be down in just a couple of short months. Asbestos abatement is a big part of that project, and that'll take some time before we can actually get the walls down. But you will see some of the construction vehicles there mobilizing and getting ready for that work. The first subcommittee meeting was held in November. We're bringing them up to speed with the same information that this council's received in the past and some of the action that's already been underway. We'll be meeting again with them next week to finish out that informational update, and they'll proceed very quickly forward next month. As an update to the park acquisition, we are on a regular basis providing this drawing to the advisory board and now to the subcommittee. This is the Upper Park area. At the top of the drawing is the old Interstate 40. At the lower part of the drawing is the new Interstate 40, and this is the areas between Hudson and Broadway of that park. The parcels in dark blue are already acquired. In the lower left-hand corner, that would be the Union train station. In the larger block of blue, that is the Federal Post Office. The light blue areas are those that, in the lower right-hand corner, are those that are needed for the Skydance Bridge construction that's scheduled to begin here shortly. We are negotiating with those property owners on contracts currently, but all of the owners, and there's 29 parcels on this map, have been contacted, and expectations are that we'll have the Upper Park acquired by next summer. When we look at the transit modern streetcar, a lot of things have been underway since this spring. Let's Talk Transit discussions, which were hosted by COPTA, were completed this spring, and that was to start some of the early discussions on alignment. The multimodal transit hub location study is underway. That's also some of the initial consulting dollars that are being spent by MAPS 3. It was under the direction of council that we participate with ACOG, the state, and COPTA jointly to fund that study. The alternatives analysis is also underway by COPTA. But the subcommittee did hold their first meeting last month. They've got a lot of energy. They've got a lot of great ideas, and so we're getting to the point where we're receiving recommendations from them. Many of the members on the transit subcommittee are also on the alternatives analysis group, and so that's also convenient for us in that we're able to coordinate a lot of the efforts between both those bodies. I would expect that we would see some recommendations on the transit projects this spring once a couple of those studies start coming to a close, and we can begin to make a plan for the transit projects. Convention Center being the largest, the consultant selection is underway for the location study. The interviews are scheduled this Friday, where we will hopefully bring back in the next 2 short weeks a recommendation and negotiate a contract with that consultant. We're still on a schedule to have that recommendation made also this spring, as many of the projects under MAPS 3, whether it's with the park, the transit, or even the convention center, have connections and coordination issues that need to be resolved. Subcommittees held 2 meetings. We will have another meeting for them also here shortly. As we look at the Trails Master Plan and a part of the Trails Project, this is one of the projects that we have a lot of good information on, and we're ready to proceed forward. The subcommittee was just recently appointed, and so we'll be having their first meeting next week to bring them up to speed. But this is something that we think we can quickly affect as a part of both the implementation plan, as a part of the subcommittee now being active, to where we can have some trails projects, we believe, as some of the early MAPS 3 work. The sidewalks, which is listed here, is also similar. It's one of those that we do have the same committee. The trails and the sidewalks are a shared committee. We will be receiving recommendations from them also as a part of their meetings next week and beginning into the future, so that we can bring that back to council as a part of the overall plan. The Oklahoma River, there are 2 projects that were authorized and are already underway. This will be the racecourse windscreen and lighting projects. 2 of the smaller out of the $60 million that are anticipated there. But the consultant selections are underway with those, and we hope to bring consultant recommendations forward soon. first meeting of the Oklahoma River Committee is next week. The State Fairgrounds, the State Fair of Oklahoma is currently reviewing and updating their facilities master plan. They have a meeting next week where we're going to be receiving some updated information as a part of the subcommittee next week, have them an update that will help us move forward through this spring. And so, again, another project that is on track. And then Senior Health and Wellness, we've had the first meeting there as well. The consultant selection is underway for this scope of work of development. This was something that came out of council. Clearly, one of the projects that has the least bit of information, and we want to make sure that we bring it up to the same level as the other projects in the MAPS 3 program. They're scheduled to have their second meeting in January. But with that, we really have engaged each of the 8 projects to some level, whether it's through the subcommittees that have been appointed and starting to have certain meetings, or we're actually in the process of selecting consultants. I think the biggest thing that you'll see over the next month, of course, is the work that ADG will be providing. We'll be working very closely with the advisory board on that implementation plan, and that will be the next major milestone for us as we ready council in the spring for the overall plan of MAPS 3. But with that, I'd be happy to provide any additional answers to questions that you might have.
Eric, just a general question with respect to MAPS 3 as a whole. You mentioned bringing on additional project managers. Could you just be a little bit more specific with regards to your intent?
So in our office, we actually, since we are still managing the MAPS 3 program, or excuse me, the MAPS for Kids program, we have certain individual city staff managers, project managers that are assigned to schoolwork. Obviously, the schoolwork is still pretty intense, and so we're not prepared to start transitioning project managers over to MAPS 3 just yet. And so we anticipate that we'll engage a few additional city staff as project managers that will be responsible for the projects. We do have just for example, the demolition of the post office requires city management. And so we do have a manager that's currently working schools that's managing that. But as we kick off some of the larger projects, we're going to need additional staff support. So these would be in-house project managers that I speak of that will assist the consultants, the architects, engineers through the city process.
Eric, just a quick question. Given your extensive preparation work, when might we see some actual construction in the sidewalks and trails project?
You know, I think the trails has the most opportunity because of the trails master plan, and some of the locations are very clear. I think as we work through the subcommittee and pending the implementation plan, which I think very well could support trails being early projects, we can engage consultants that would actually do the designs of those probably in the spring. I think they could finish that work over the summer and early fall, where we could actually have it bid and hopefully in construction by the end of next year. So I think in a probably 9 to 12 month process, we could actually see some trails construction. I'm not sure that sidewalks is much far behind that, but we do have a process that we need to identify those sidewalks and make sure that we get those on a drawing that is agreeable to the council.
Eric, with respect to that last comment, are you beginning with the basic criteria, the council criteria, or council priorities for sidewalks as a starting point for that discussion?
Yes, that's our intent. And then, of course, as a part of the subcommittee meetings, we'll receive any additional input that might be available to us at that time.
Can I ask one? The water project on the river, has that committee been established?
It is, and so we'll actually have their first meeting next Wednesday.
One other question: the trails and the parks, the program that the city has tried to participate with as it relates to small businesses and minority contractors. As we go forth, are you keeping a list of those individuals who have provided information as it relates to their minority participation on the construction project?
So we will be utilizing under the MAPS 3 program the same local business utilization plan that the council adopted, I believe, just about 2 years ago. And so the requirements for reporting in contracting from architectural engineering perspective and from a contractor's perspective are going to be available as a part of the MAPS 3. So the answer is yes, we will do that just like we do on other city projects.
Any other questions? Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
The next presentation is going to be the Bicycle Safety Task Force.
Thank you. I'm Randy Yance with the Planning Department. Also with me is John Sharp from the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments, affectionately known as ACOG. As a result of some recent cycling tragedies in Oklahoma City, a task force was formed to go over what we could do to improve bicycle safety. There were members from the Trails Advisory Committee on that, as well as local cyclists, shop owners, staff from ACOG and Oklahoma City. And after several meetings, 3 recommendations kind of rose to the top. One was the development of a safety/education plan, and the intent of this would be to educate both drivers and cyclists to their responsibilities on the road. A part of that kind of outreach would be a website showing the routes, lanes, and trails, along with safety information for cyclists, as well as a media campaign that would reach a larger audience. We've already formed another subcommittee to start forming that message and that media campaign, and we do have actually have ODOT enhancement funds that can be used for that. The second recommendation was to look for opportunities to create bike lanes when possible. Bike lanes are separated from the roadway, delineated with a line, a little safer for the cyclist. We want to look at future widenings, specifically projects that tie into the trail system that could be widened to include bike lanes, and start using our trail system, as you just heard, that will be greatly improved, more as a transportation network, not just a recreation facility. Another recommendation was to look for road diet opportunities for low-volume 4-lane streets that could be reduced to 2 lanes and a center turn lane without diminishing the level of service on those streets. We've seen that on Chartel and how well that worked there. And the other was to explore other methods for marking bike lanes and routes. We've currently adhered to the AASHTO and MUTCD standards, and we're going to start looking at other methods out there and seeing what Federal Highway will let us do. And the third was to support state laws on distracted driving. There are several that are working their way through committee, and one of the biggest problems for bicycle safety and safety of all drivers, it's considered the new drunk driving as distracted driving. And as those state laws are passed, to mirror these laws in the city ordinance. Now, John is here to speak, on the regional behalf of what's going on as far as bike safety and bike facilities.
Yes, good morning. 2 things I really want to talk about on this particular topic. The first thing is ACOG is too far away. Thank you, appreciate it. ACOG, the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments, does a 30-year transportation plan. And one of the things that we are really looking for this next go-around is to, as the projects come through us, to apply for $14 to $16 million of federal funds per year, is a set of criteria that encourages local communities to advance bike and pedestrian facilities within their community. And each project that comes through gets a grading based on criteria by which they go up against other cities and other projects. And so very, very important for this particular region, we feel, and obviously the communities feel this way, is that we should promote, obviously, bike and pedestrian projects. So that's consistent with some of the things that Randy has said earlier today. The other thing is, from our standpoint, we're looking at various points that go along in this, and they really come with accessibility, connectivity, livability, and safety. And so safety really is tied into this whole issue, and that we have to promote safe projects in the region as we promote bike and pedestrian projects. The other thing is, like we'd like to say, is that with our Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, we have a regional discussion on these types of issues, and we'll be bringing this issue forward to them next week as we have our next regional meeting to discuss the same issue as it presents itself to the other cities. So this is really, even though this is an Oklahoma City subject we're talking about this morning, it's a regional issue also, and we're very, very interested in providing support to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mayor,
Go ahead, Skip.
Skip. Sam. Skip. Sam, then Skip.
I was at the retired banquet too, Skip, last night. Mayor, on the, I failed to see that a written report was provided to the council, which we'll do, Randy, so that we have these in front of us for consideration and discussion in the future. I just want to add 2 things, or elaborate on 2 things that Randy and John mentioned. And incidentally, John Sharp, thank you for your time from ACOG. This participation, staff participation with ACOG on this kind of effort, really it helps us with taking a look at good practices, best practices elsewhere that he can bring to our attention, as well as keeping us aware of the connectivity Oklahoma City bike and pedestrian plan should be metropolitan in scope, and John helps us in that connectivity as we look to extend and connect with other municipalities around us. But on the matter of public safety and education, public education campaign, with our 3 meetings, the Bicycle Safety Committee, this was just paramount in our discussion. We really have to get out front in public, and we can't just depend on some cheapy PSAs to do this. It's going to take some budget to get out and really make this known. As Randy mentioned, there are some ODOT enhancement funds made available to Oklahoma City for this purpose, $75,000. But part of this committee's effort, ongoing committee's effort, will be to develop a comprehensive public education media packet, and that's going to be done within the next 30 days or so. And when we see that, we'll be able to use the $70,000 plus towards the start of that public education campaign, but I think we're going to see a need for a bit more to really be expansive about this and keep it in front of the public. Another item that got a lot of discussion in the committee was bike lanes on future street widenings. And the recommendations suggest a plan be created that streets in good condition that are subject to widening and have a connection to the trail system ought to include, in that widening plan, ought to include a bike lane. That could be very, it's just too broad to get our hands around every street widening project and expect a bike lane to be incorporated in our street widening projects. But one of the things that I'd like to just ask the manager's office if they could bring forward for our discussion consideration is a policy consideration where we do new street widening projects and they will have a connection to our trail system or potential extended part of our trail system, that policy consideration then incorporate the addition of a bike lane in the street widening project. Again, not for discussion this morning, but just for purposes as you get this full report from John and Randy, that we take a look specifically not only at the public education media plan, but street widening projects in the future and a policy consideration in that respect. Again, where it would show connection to a trail system, part of our master trail system.
I have a question. I'm not sure it's for Randy or Sam, but in your efforts when you put this committee together to look at bike safety, did you all include anybody from the Department of Public Safety? It seems to me that one of the things that may be lacking is an emphasis by the Department of Public Safety on including questions or some kind of testing that would reflect a knowledge of the drivers that the roads are shared with bicyclists. Because I think that's one of the issues we've got to deal with, because I think that some of our drivers still feel that bikes are an intrusion on the roadway, that they do not have a clear right to be on the roadway, and that's not the case. I think as part of the education process to make our drivers more aware of that, I think would be helpful.
I think we could, we can do that. We had M.T. Berry, that's as far as we stretched, Pat. That doesn't get to what you're suggesting, but
state level problem, I think.
If I may answer that, we actually did talk to DPS, and some of the things that they have to deal with is their budget issues, and they have limited amounts of money for commercials, PSAs, and so forth to put forth that message. And so we've had some discussions with them on a limited basis, but we would have to go back to them some more and talk some more. Obviously, they look at these issues from a statewide basis, and we were looking at them more from Oklahoma City Metro.
But if you affect Tulsa and Oklahoma City, you affected the majority of the people in the state. And I'm not talking about the Department of Public Safety doing PSAs, public service announcements. I'm talking about incorporating more training for drivers or examination of drivers in their testing process before they issue a driver's license, that people understand that bicyclists have certain rights to our streets, and that is not an issue that we could ignore, I don't think.
Skip?
Mayor, in this, I missed the opportunity earlier, but I think it's more fitting now because we have a representative from ACOG here and also members of the committee. But the Hefner Road from Broadway Extension to Midwest Boulevard will be a major surface improvement starting probably in March. And this would not have happened without the partnership with the City of Oklahoma City, ACOG, and the Department of Transportation. We're talking about a $3 million project that the City of Oklahoma City is only going to have to pay for the engineering surface study of about $60,000 or $600,000. So we're a 20% participant in a project of this magnitude that is a complete resurfacing. Although it's not a street widening project, I have asked the question because there's a lot of cyclists that ride Hefner Road from Broadway Extension, some from May Avenue all the way to Jones and back. But because of the way the funding is put together and the limitations on how those funds can be spent, they cannot widen for a designated bike lane. And the questions have been asked of me, and I've asked Dennis, and he has explained to me that this would cost, because of the funding, an enormous amount of additional funds, and it would almost basically create a 4-lane highway that the citizens in that area would not be appreciative of, I know. But I want to thank ACOG, and I want to thank Mr. Dennis Clowers for his oversight in reference to inquiring and managing funds to put them together to create a major project for the citizens in the northeast quadrant of Oklahoma City, and especially as far as Hefner Road is concerned, that would also benefit the future rides of individuals that want to ride their bikes out on Hefner Road. And so I want to thank your agency and all the individuals who have been a part of that. And we have to give a lot of respect to Dennis Clowers for the hard work that he's done to manage a program like this, to put the city in a situation of improving a major road that we're going to only be out 20% of the total amount of the project.
Anything else? City manager reports?
Just one more comment about the city manager reports. We do have the November sales and use tax collection report in your packet. We are continuing to see some growth in our sales tax and use tax revenues over last year. We do know that quite a bit of that is attributed to the hailstorm and some of the other weather events that we had earlier in the year, and we're working to identify the amounts of that revenue that we think were one-time events. But now it does appear to be that we are seeing some growth in our sales tax revenues, which is some good news for us for this fiscal year.
Any comments or questions? There are no citizens in the chamber, so we have executive session. We'll be back.